I've read somewhere that life changes happen in slow-motion disasters or lightning strike moments. Mine was definitely the latter. There I was, Genevieve Cooper, acclaimed director of emotional character studies, standing in the sterile hallway of Richmond Memorial Hospital wearing a volunteer badge that felt like a scarlet letter of PR obligation. "This is ridiculous," I muttered, tugging at the blue vest they'd given me. My producer Darren had insisted that some community engagement would help soften my reputation before my next film's funding meeting. Apparently being called brilliantly meticulous in Variety translates to difficult bitch in studio speak. A nurse pointed me toward the pediatric ward, and that's when I saw her. Blonde hair pulled back in a messy bun, laughing, with a child hooked to enforce something about her hands. The gentle way they moved, communicating safety, caught my filmmaker's eye immediately. "You must be the new Thursday volunteer," she said, approaching me with an extended hand. "I'm Alana." "Genevieve," I replied, noticing how blue her eyes were, the kind of blue cinematographers spend hours trying to capture. "I'm just here because my producer thinks I need to soften my image." Damn. Why had I admitted that? Alana's laugh was genuine. "At least you're honest. Most people come in claiming they're saints." Over the next few hours, I watched her work. Alana had a gift, making each patient feel like the most important person in the room. Between distributing lunches and reading to patients, I learned she was an actress still waiting for her break, working catering jobs between auditions and volunteering here twice weekly. "You're wasting your talents here," I said during our break. "You should be in front of a camera." "Says the woman who puts people in front of cameras for a living," she replied, brushing off the compliment. "I've had enough casting directors tell me I'm interesting but not quite right to last a lifetime." I wanted to tell her those casting directors were idiots, but before I could, our conversation was interrupted by an urgent call from the nurse's station. Mrs. Abernathy, an elderly patient, was refusing her medication. "She does this sometimes," Alana sighed. "Mind coming with me?" She responds better to an audience. We entered the room to find a tiny, fierce woman with silver hair glaring at her pill cup. "Mrs. Abernathy, I brought someone special to meet you," Alana said warmly. "Unless they're here to break me out, I'm not interested," the old woman snapped. "This is Genevieve Cooper, the film director," Alana continued, unfazed by the hostility. The woman's eyes widened. "You made Winter's Harbor?" "My granddaughter took me to see it." I nodded, surprised. That film had barely made back its budget. "Hated the ending," Mrs. Abernathy declared. "The sister should have told him off properly." I laughed genuinely for the first time that day. Maybe you're right. What followed was 30 minutes of film criticism from a surprisingly sharp-eyed viewer. Somewhere during our discussion, Alana slipped the medication into the woman's hand, and she took it without comment. As we left the room, Alana whispered, "She hasn't taken her heart medication in 3 days. You might have just saved her life with your film talk." In the hallway, I found myself studying Alana's profile. The determined set of her jaw, the compassion in her eyes. Something about her pulled at me, a feeling I usually only got when discovering the perfect shot for a scene. "Will you be here next Thursday?" she asked as my shift ended. I had a production meeting scheduled. "Yes," I heard myself say. "Same time." Walking to my car, I realized I'd just volunteered for more volunteer work. That night, I rearranged my entire schedule to keep that Thursday open. As I fell asleep, I kept seeing Alana's hands, gentle, capable, expressive, and wondering what kind of character she would play in the story of my life. I didn't know it then, but I'd just filmed the opening scene of something that would change everything. 3 weeks of volunteering at Richmond Memorial had become the strangest bright spot in my otherwise frustrating professional life. While my film was slowly being torn apart by studio notes, those Thursday afternoons with Alana kept me sane. "They want me to change the ending again," I groaned, helping Alana organize the book cart for patient visits. Apparently a female protagonist who chooses her career over a relationship is too alienating for mainstream audiences. "Heaven forbid women have priorities beyond romance," Alana replied, shelving a worn copy of Little Women. "Though I'd kill for even those kinds of problems right now." I glanced up. "Another rejection?" The casting director said, and I quote, "You have a unique look, but we need someone more conventionally attractive for this role." Translation, "Not pretty enough." She smiled, but I could see the hurt behind it. "That's absurd," I said, suddenly angry on her behalf. "You're beautiful." The words hung between us for a moment too long. Alana tucked a strand of blonde hair behind her ear and focused intently on alphabetizing the children's books. "Tell that to the 23 casting directors who've passed on me this month," she finally said. "I'm starting to think I should have listened to my acting coach and gotten that nose job. If you change anything about your face, I'll personally blacklist you from every production I ever work on," I said, only half joking. "Your face has character. That's rare." When the volunteer shift ended, we walked to the parking lot together, our Thursday ritual now comfortable and familiar. I was just about to ask if she wanted to grab coffee when my phone rang the studio, again. After I hung up, Alana raised an eyebrow. "Bad news?" "The usual creative differences," I sighed. "But that's not even my biggest problem. My landlord just sent notice he's raising my rent by 30%. Apparently my building's going upscale." "You too?" Alana looked genuinely surprised. "My roommate just told me she's moving in with her boyfriend next month. I can't afford our place alone, and finding decent housing in Richmond that doesn't cost a fortune is impossible." We reached her car first, an aging Honda with a bumper sticker reading, "My other car is on a movie set." The irony wasn't lost on either of us. "Housing in this city is criminal," I said, leaning against her car. "I've been looking at listings all week, but everything decent requires first and last month's rent plus security deposit. That's over $5,000 up front." Alana unlocked her car door but didn't get in. Something in her expression changed, a calculation happening behind those blue eyes. "This might sound crazy," she said slowly, "but what if we pooled resources, shared a place?" The suggestion caught me off guard. Roommates? At my age? I'd lived alone for years, valued my space, my routines. "I mean, we both need something soon. We're both clean, responsible adults," she continued, filling my silence. "And we'd both save a lot of money." I should have said no immediately. Directors don't room with struggling actresses. It crosses professional boundaries, creates complications. But my practical side was already calculating the savings. And some other, less logical part of me liked the idea of coming home to something other than an empty apartment. "I've got excellent references," Alana added, with a half smile that suggested she knew how absurd this proposal was. "Let me think about it," I replied, trying to sound non-committal. That night, after receiving another email from my landlord about the rent increase, I pulled up rental listings again. 2 bedrooms were actually cheaper per person than my current studio. I'd have more space, lower costs, and... I pictured Alana's smile, her easy laughter with patience, her quiet determination. Before I could talk myself out of it, I texted her, "If you're serious about roommate idea, I found some places we could look at this weekend." Her response came immediately, dead serious. "Send listings. I make great coffee and promise not to play show tunes before 9 a.m. I laughed out loud in my empty apartment, wondering if I'd just made a terrible mistake or the best impulsive decision of my life. Either way, in 30 days, Genevieve Cooper, the director known for maintaining perfect control, would be sharing living space with an aspiring actress with eyes the color of a perfect summer sky. What could possibly go wrong? Moving day had all the elements of a comedy I would never direct. Torrential spring rain, a broken elevator, and 2 women who barely knew each other committing to shared living quarters. The Richmond skies opened up just as the moving truck arrived at our new 2-bedroom apartment. "It's a sign from the universe," I muttered, watching rain pound the windshield of my car. "Yes," Alana replied cheerfully, tying her blonde hair back. "The sign says, 'Congratulations on your timing.'" Her optimism should have annoyed me. Instead, I found myself smiling as we made a dash for the building entrance, immediately soaked despite the short distance. The apartment manager met us in the lobby with news that perfected the disaster. "Elevator's out. Maintenance says it'll be fixed by tomorrow." "We're on the 5th floor," I reminded him. He shrugged apologetically. "Stairs are that way." 3 hours later, soaking wet and exhausted, we'd managed to get our essential furniture and most important boxes upstairs. The movers had abandoned us after bringing up the larger pieces, unwilling to make dozens more trips up 5 flights. "I never want to see another staircase again," I groaned, collapsing onto my newly positioned couch. My hair was plastered to my forehead, makeup long gone. Alana appeared from the kitchen with 2 glasses of wine. "Moving day christening," she explained, handing me one. "We've earned it." That first toast in our rain-splattered living room, surrounded by mountains of boxes, felt strangely significant, like we'd accomplished something meaningful together, more than just relocating our possessions. The peace lasted approximately 18 hours. Our differences in living habits emerged quickly. I discovered Alana was an early riser who practiced monologues at 6 a.m. I was a night owl who often read scripts until 2 a.m. with my desk lamp casting light under her door. "Do you think you could use headphones when you watch your film references?" Alana asked on our third night, appearing in my doorway in an oversized t-shirt that reached her knees. "The dialogue keeps waking me up." "Sorry," I said, genuinely embarrassed. "Work habit. I forget other people have normal sleep schedules." 2 mornings later, I stumbled into the kitchen at 7 a.m. to find her performing an emotional scene from Tennessee Williams, complete with dramatic gestures that nearly sent my coffee mug flying. "Maybe we need a schedule," I suggested, after nearly wearing my caffeine. "Quiet hours or something." She looked mortified. "I'm being that roommate, aren't I? The annoying actress who treats every room like a stage? No more than I'm being that pretentious director who thinks everyone runs on her schedule," I admitted. We established boundaries: no rehearsals before 8 a.m., headphones after 11 p.m., shared meals when our schedules aligned, and private space respected absolutely. Slowly, we found a rhythm that worked. Then came the night that changed everything. I heard her come in late, the door closing with unusual force. I was working on storyboards in the living room, my papers spread across our coffee table. When Alana appeared, her eyes were red. She'd been crying. "Bad day?" I asked, moving my work aside. "I didn't get the part," she said, her voice hollow. "The one I told you about, the indie drama? Down to me and one other actress, and they went with her. Said she had more of a look." The rejection clearly cut deep. This wasn't just another failed audition. This had been her most promising opportunity in months. Without thinking, I went to our kitchen, grabbed the emergency wine I kept for studio note sessions, and returned with 2 glasses. "Come sit." As the rain tapped against our windows, Alana told me about the audition, the hopes she'd pinned on it, the rent she was struggling to cover even with our shared arrangement. I listened, not as a director assessing talent, but as someone who cared. "You know what hurts most?" she said, her voice soft. "I really thought I nailed it." "You'll get the next one," I said, touching her hand lightly. She looked up at me, vulnerability making her eyes impossibly bluer. "You're the only person who's ever made me believe that might be true." I don't know who moved first. Maybe we both did. But suddenly her lips were on mine, soft and tasting of wine and salt from dried tears. The kiss lasted only seconds before she pulled back, eyes wide with surprise at what we'd done. She began. "It's late," I interrupted, suddenly terrified of what this meant. "We should get some sleep." As I lay awake that night, staring at my ceiling, I knew I had just directed us into complicated territory that no boundary agreement could possibly cover. For 3 days, we performed an elaborate dance of avoidance around our apartment. I left for the studio early, she scheduled auditions back to back, and somehow we managed to be in separate rooms when both home. The kiss hung between us like an unspoken line of dialogue neither wanted to acknowledge. Then Marcus, my casting director, called about my upcoming project. "Jen, I'm stuck on this supporting role. The actress needs to convey strength but vulnerability, you know? Someone who can stand up to your lead without being bitchy about it." I was half listening, reviewing production notes, when an image of Alana performing that Tennessee Williams piece flashed through my mind. "I might know someone," I said cautiously. "Send me their info," Marcus replied. But I hesitated. Suggesting Alana crossed a line I wasn't sure we should cross. Our personal boundaries were already blurry enough without adding professional complications. Plus, if she bombed the audition, how awkward would our living situation become? "Actually, let me think about it," I told him. "I'll get back to you." That evening, I came home to a dark apartment. A spring thunderstorm had knocked out power in half the neighborhood. Alana sat cross-legged on our living room floor, surrounded by candles she'd apparently been hoarding for just such an occasion. "Emergency preparedness kit," she explained, gesturing to the little flames. "Plus 2 bottles of wine and leftover Thai food that we should probably eat before it goes bad." The candlelight created a strange intimacy, the golden glow softening the edges of our awkwardness. After 1 glass of wine, conversation began flowing again. After 2, we were laughing about our disastrous moving day. By the third, we'd drifted into the kind of late-night confessions that only darkness seems to permit. I started directing because I couldn't stand letting others tell my stories wrong, I admitted, leaning against the couch. My film school boyfriend adapted my personal journal into a screenplay without permission. It was awful, but the professor loved it. What did you do? Alana asked, her face flickering in candlelight. Learned cinematography, editing, and direction, then made my own version that won the student showcase. He never worked in film again. Alana laughed. Ruthless. I love it. Your turn. Childhood dream? Broadway, she admitted. Specifically, playing Elphaba in Wicked. Spent years in vocal training before my acting coach convinced me my strength was dramatic roles, not musical theater. As she spoke, her hand occasionally brushed against mine in the dark. Each touch felt deliberate yet deniable, electricity disguised as accident. I can't picture you giving up on anything, I said softly. Everyone has disappointments, she replied. The trick is finding new dreams. The power flashed back on suddenly, making us both blink in the harsh light. The moment, whatever it had been, evaporated. 2 days later, I made a decision. After our kiss and candlelit confessions, I couldn't pretend I wasn't invested in Alana's success. I called Marcus and arranged an audition. I have a script I'd like you to read, I told her that evening, trying for casual, just to get another perspective. Alana looked surprised but pleased. We sat at our small dining table, script pages between us. I watched as she read silently first, her expressions changing subtly with each page turn. Which character did you want me to read? She asked finally. Claire, I said. The sister. What happened next changed everything. Alana didn't just read the lines, she transformed. The sweet, sometimes uncertain woman I'd been living with disappeared, replaced by a fierce, wounded character whose every word carried emotional weight. She found nuances in the dialogue I hadn't even noticed when writing it. When she finished, the silence between us vibrated with something new. That role, she said quietly, is this for your new film? I nodded, unable to find my director's voice, the one that stayed professional and detached. Would you consider letting me audition? Properly, through channels, not as a favor. Marcus already has your headshot, I admitted. The audition's Tuesday if you want it. Alana stared at me for a long moment before setting down the script. She moved around the table slowly, deliberately, never breaking eye contact. When she reached me, she did something that broke every boundary we'd established. She straddled my lap, took my face in her hands, and kissed me with an intensity that made our first kiss seem like a rehearsal. My hands found her waist, then slid under her shirt, tracing the warm skin of her back. This complicates everything, I whispered when we finally broke apart. Everything worth having usually does, she replied, leading me toward my bedroom. That night, as rain tapped against the windows again, we mapped new territory together, professional boundaries dissolving with each article of clothing removed. Her skin was softer than I'd imagined, responsive to every touch, every whispered direction. When she shuddered beneath me, calling my name with her filmmaker's hands tangled in her hair, I knew we'd crossed a line we could never uncross. In the morning light, reality waited with all its complications. I'd been in the film industry long enough to know the unspoken rules. Directors don't sleep with actresses auditioning for their films. They especially don't let those actresses live in their apartments. And they absolutely don't sit in casting sessions trying to maintain objectivity while remembering how those actresses look tangled in their sheets. Yet there I was, watching Alana audition for Marcus and the producers, fighting to keep my expression neutral as she delivered Claire's monologue with raw perfection. She's incredible, Marcus whispered after Alana left the room. Where did you find her? Around, I said vaguely, shuffling my notes. She volunteers at Richmond Memorial. The producer, David, leaned forward. She's perfect for Claire. Those scenes with Jessica will be electric. I nodded, feeling both pride in Alana's talent and an unexpected stab of something that felt dangerously like jealousy at the thought of her chemistry with our lead actress. When I called to tell her she got the part, Alana screamed so loudly I had to hold the phone away from my ear. Are you serious? I got it? For real? Her voice was breathless with excitement. You earned it, I said firmly. Every member of that panel chose you unanimously. That night, We celebrated with champagne and takeout from Richmond's best Italian restaurant. As Alana danced around our apartment, radiant with joy, I pushed away the nagging voice warning me about the complications ahead. The problem started sooner than expected. At the first production meeting, David casually mentioned, "By the way, your roommate is fantastic. Smart move having her read for Claire." I froze. "How did you know she's my roommate?" "Small industry, smaller city." He shrugged. "Someone mentioned seeing you two apartment hunting. Didn't you say something during casting?" I hadn't, deliberately. By the next day, whispers were circulating. I overheard a production assistant asking another if sleeping with the director was Alana's strategy. The comment made me physically ill. That evening, we attended a pre-production party at David's home. Alana wore a midnight blue dress that made her eyes look impossibly deep, her blonde hair swept up to reveal the graceful curve of her neck. I couldn't help staring, which was my first mistake. "You two aren't exactly subtle, Jessica," our lead actress murmured, appearing beside me with a knowing smile. "I don't know what you mean," I replied, voice carefully neutral. "Please," she laughed. "I've worked with you before, General. You've never looked at anyone the way you're looking at her right now." Before I could respond, a group of investors cornered me about budget concerns. When I next spotted Alana, she was engaged in tense conversation with one of the executive producers, her smile fixed but her posture rigid. On the drive home, she was uncharacteristically quiet. "What did Richard want?" I finally asked. "Oh, just telling me how lucky I am," she said, staring out the window. "Apparently most actresses have to go through dozens of auditions to get cast in your films, not just sleep with you." I nearly swerved off the road. "He said that to you?" Not in those exact words, but the implication was clear. She turned to me, eyes glistening. "Is that what everyone thinks? That I didn't earn this?" "Your audition tape speaks for itself," I said firmly. "Anyone who thinks otherwise can go to hell." But we both knew it wasn't that simple. By the time we arrived home, the tension had crystallized into something sharp and dangerous. "Maybe this was a mistake," Alana said quietly as we entered our apartment. "Not us, I mean me taking the role." "Don't you dare let them take this from you," I said fiercely. "You were born to play Claire." "At what cost, Genevieve? My reputation? Yours?" The argument escalated quickly, years of industry frustrations and new vulnerabilities colliding in our once safe space. "I've worked too damn hard to be reduced to someone's casting couch story," Alana shouted, tears streaming down her face. "That's not what happened, and you know it," I fired back. "We happened after I already sent your headshot to Marcus. But who's going to believe that? Who's going to believe I earned this?" The awful thing was, she was right. In an industry built on perception, timing was everything, and ours couldn't have been worse. When she turned away, I caught her wrist, pulling her back to me. The anger between us transformed in an instant. Her mouth found mine, desperate and hungry, the kiss tasting of champagne and salt from her tears. "I don't care what they think," I whispered against her lips, even though we both knew it was a lie. But that night, as we fell into bed together, hands frantically removing each other's clothes as if we could solve our professional problems through physical connection, one truth became clear. Whatever happened with the film, Alana and I had created something that couldn't be untangled by industry gossip. The question was whether it could survive what came next. I woke to the sound of Alana's coffee grinder, its mechanical whir somehow more irritating than usual. The night before felt both distant and too immediate. The party, the accusations, the passionate reconciliation. Morning brought reality back into sharp focus. When I entered our kitchen, Alana stood with her back to me, fussing with mugs and cream as if they required her complete concentration. "Good morning," I offered. She turned, handing me coffee with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Morning." We moved around each other in a careful dance, avoiding topics that needed addressing. The kiss from last night hung between us like an unspoken question mark. "I've got a production meeting at 9, I finally said, desperate to break the silence. "I'm meeting with wardrobe at 11, she replied, studying her coffee as if it contained ancient secrets. "Should I take separate transportation?" The question stung more than it should have. "If you think that's best." "I don't know what's best anymore, Genevieve." She set her mug down with too much force. "That's the problem." Before I could respond, her phone chimed with a text. She checked it, her expression shifting from tension to something more complicated. David's assistant, she explained. Asking if I can come in early to discuss my character's backstory. I nodded, trying to look neutral despite the alarm bells ringing in my head. David never discussed character backstory. That was my domain as director. But saying so would only feed her fears about favoritism. You should go, I said instead. It's a good sign they're investing in Claire's development. After Alana left, I called Marcus. What's David planning with Alana this morning? Marcus hesitated. You haven't heard? He wants to discuss recasting Claire. Said the chemistry readings yesterday weren't what he expected. The floor seemed to drop from beneath me. He can't do that. We're 10 days from shooting. He's the producer. General, he's concerned about the optics of your situation. My situation? I repeated, voice dangerously low. Everyone knows you two are living together. Some are suggesting it influenced casting decisions. I ended the call and drove to the studio like a woman possessed. By the time I burst into David's office, my hands were shaking with fury. David looked up calmly from his desk where Alana sat opposite him, her face pale. Genevieve, I was just explaining to Alana our concerns. Your concerns? I corrected. Not mine. Not castings. The investors saw her audition tape and approved her unanimously, I interrupted. She's perfect for Claire, and you know it. David's expression hardened. What I know is that this film represents a significant investment. We can't afford rumors about the director's personal life affecting casting choices. Alana stood abruptly. I should go. Alana, wait, I said. But she was already moving past me, her body rigid with hurt. When she was gone, David sighed. I like her, Jen, I do. But you've put us in an impossible position. You're asking me to fire an actress because of who she lives with? I'm asking you to maintain professional boundaries during this production. He leaned forward. She stays in the film on one condition. You two maintain separate residences until shooting wraps. I left the studio in a daze, driving home to find Alana already packing. I called Sarah, she said without looking up. She has a guest room I can use. You don't have to leave, I protested weakly. Yes, I do. She finally met my eyes, her own hollow with resignation. You know I do. This isn't fair. Welcome to Hollywood, even the Richmond version. She zipped her suitcase with finality. I want this role, Genevieve, I need it. And if living elsewhere for 8 weeks is what it takes, that's what I'll do. I watched her pack the essentials. Clothes, toiletries, scripts. The apartment already felt emptier, colder. What about us? I asked as she headed for the door. She paused, hand on the knob. I don't know if there can be an us right now. Not if I want to be taken seriously as an actress rather than the director's girlfriend. The word girlfriend hung in the air between us, the first time either had used such a definitive term. Fight for yourself first, I said finally. That's what I'd do in your place. She nodded once, eyes bright with unshed tears, then walked out. That night, alone in our apartment, I realized how quickly I'd grown accustomed to her presence, the scent of her shampoo, her humming while cooking, even her ridiculous early morning monologues. The silence felt oppressive, accusatory. I poured a glass of wine and stood at our living room window, watching the Richmond skyline, wondering how something that had felt so right could unravel so quickly under the harsh spotlight of industry scrutiny. The first day of shooting arrived with Richmond's summer heat pressing down like a weighted blanket. I stood behind monitors, watching my vision come to life while maintaining a careful, professional distance from Alana. When she stepped on set in Claire's costume, a simple blue dress that somehow made her look both vulnerable and formidable, the crew fell silent. She embodied the character so completely that for a moment, I forgot the woman underneath, forgot our shared apartment sitting half empty across town, forgot everything except the perfection of her in-frame. Action, I called, my director's voice steady despite the turmoil beneath. Alana delivered her lines flawlessly, but something was missing, the spark, the emotional authenticity I knew she possessed. After 3 takes, I called for a break. Can I speak with Alana privately? I asked the hovering crew. When we were alone in a corner of the set, I kept my voice low. What's happening? This isn't what I saw in your audition. I'm hitting my marks, delivering my lines, she replied stiffly. You're technically perfect but emotionally absent. Claire is a woman torn between loyalty and self-preservation. She's breaking apart inside while maintaining composure. Alana's eyes flashed. Sounds familiar. The double meaning wasn't lost on me. Use it then, I challenged quietly. Channel whatever you're feeling about me, about us, into Claire. She stared at me for a long moment. That's dangerous. Great art usually is. When we resumed filming, something had shifted. Alana's performance transformed. Raw, honest, electric. The crew watched in hushed admiration as she tore through the scene, her character's pain and conflict bleeding into every word. When I finally called cut, there was a moment of stunned silence before the set erupted in spontaneous applause. That's what I've been looking for, I told her afterward, maintaining professional distance, despite wanting to pull her into my arms. Don't ask how I got there, she replied, her voice barely audible. Days blurred together as we shot scene after scene. On set, Alana and I maintained a careful choreography of professionalism, director and actress, nothing more. But the chemistry in her scenes was undeniable, as if our separation had intensified rather than diminished whatever existed between us. She's a revelation, David admitted grudgingly after reviewing the dailies one evening. You were right about her. I accepted his praise with a nod, swallowing the urge to say more. The strain of our arrangement grew heavier with each passing day. I drive home alone to our half-empty apartment, surrounded by evidence of Alana's absence, her coffee mug still in, the dish rack, her favorite throw blanket draped over the couch, her scent lingering on pillows I couldn't bring myself to wash. 3 weeks into filming, we faced the most emotionally demanding scene, Claire's confrontation with her sister after discovering a lifetime of lies. The set was cleared to essential personnel only, creating an intimacy that felt both necessary and dangerous. Alana stepped onto the set looking exhausted, shadows under her eyes suggesting she wasn't sleeping well either. When our lead actress Jessica asked if she needed a moment before starting, Alana simply shook her head. I'm ready, she said, looking directly at me. What followed was the most extraordinary performance I'd ever witnessed. Alana delivered Claire's pain with such authenticity that Jessica broke character twice, overwhelmed by her scene partner's intensity. By the final take, there wasn't a dry eye on set. That's a wrap on scene 23, I announced, my voice rougher than intended. When everyone else had filtered out to prepare for the next setup, Alana remained, collapsing into a chair as if the performance had physically drained her. That was... I struggled to find words adequate to what I'd just witnessed. Don't, she whispered. Please. I crossed to her, professional boundaries be damned. I miss you, I admitted, kneeling beside her chair. The apartment feels wrong without you there. Her eyes met mine, vulnerable in a way her characters never were. I miss you too, but this, the film, it has to come first right now. I know. Do you? She asked softly. Because I'm scared that when this is over, when I'm not your actress anymore, whatever is between us will disappear too. I reached for her hand, threading our fingers together out of sight of any remaining crew. That's not possible, I whispered. You've become essential, Alana. To the film, yes, but more importantly, to me. In that moment, something shifted between us again. The professional wall we'd maintained cracking to reveal something deeper, something neither of us had been ready to name before our forced separation. As she leaned toward me, the set around us empty and quiet, I knew with absolute certainty that whatever happened with the film, whatever Richmond's film industry might whisper about us, Alana Washington had become the most important casting decision of my life. 6 weeks of filming had transformed everyone connected to the project. The crew moved with the synchronicity of people who'd weathered creative storms together. Jessica had evolved from skeptical lead to Alana's fiercest defender. Even David had stopped watching us for signs of impropriety, too impressed by the dailies to care about our living arrangements anymore. Then the first rough cut screening changed everything. I sat in the back of the darkened screening room, watching the assembled producers and executives as they viewed our nearly finished film. When the lights came up, the silence held for 3 breathtaking seconds before the room erupted in applause. We have something special here, David announced, clapping me on the shoulder. Early buzz from the test screening is incredible, particularly about our newcomer. The newcomer in question wasn't present. Alana had been invited but declined, claiming superstition about watching unfinished work. In truth, we both knew her absence maintained the professional boundaries we'd worked so hard to establish. Later that evening, I called to share the news. They're talking Oscar potential, I told her, unable to keep the excitement from my voice. For you, Alana, your performance is that good. Her laugh sounded strained. Wow, I don't know what to say. Say you'll come home. Filming's wrapped. David can't dictate our living arrangements anymore. The silence that followed made my stomach clench. What is it? I asked. My agent called today, she said finally. A casting director from Warner Brothers saw some early footage. They want me to read for a supporting role in their new drama shooting in Los Angeles. My blood turned to ice water. Los Angeles? It would mean moving there, at least temporarily. Her voice was carefully neutral, controlled. It's potentially career-changing, General. I should have been happy for her. This was everything she'd worked for. Recognition, opportunities, a career with momentum. Instead, I felt like the floor was collapsing beneath me. When would you go? I managed to ask. The audition's next week. If I get it, shooting starts next month. The rest of the conversation passed in a blur. I said all the right things, that I was proud, excited, supportive. But after I hung up, I stood in our half-empty apartment feeling like something precious was slipping through my fingers. The next day, I buried myself in editing, barely emerging from the studio until Marcus physically dragged me out for air. You look like shit, he observed cheerfully. Is this about Alana potentially moving to LA? I glared at him. News travels fast. It's a small industry, he shrugged. Smaller when someone gives a breakthrough performance like hers. Everyone wants a piece. I should be happy for her, I admitted, watching Richmond's skyline from the studio rooftop. But instead you're terrified of losing her, he finished. Have you told her that? I hadn't. How could I? Asking her to stay would mean asking her to prioritize us over the career opportunity she deserved. That wasn't love, it was selfishness. 3 days later, dark clouds rolled in over Richmond, bringing the kind of thunderstorm that made the weather service issue flash flood warnings. I was deep in editing when my phone chimed with a message from Alana, coming by to pick up more clothes. Hope that's okay. My heart raced as I hurried home through sheets of rain, arriving just as she was unlocking the door, her blonde hair darkened and plastered to her head from the downpour. This feels familiar, I said, gesturing to the rain, remembering our moving day months earlier. Her smile was small but genuine, except this time the elevator works. We stood awkwardly in the entryway, water pooling around our feet. Without the buffer of work between us, all the careful distance we'd maintained evaporated. I heard about the Warner Brothers thing, I said finally. That's incredible, Alana. It's just an audition, she replied, moving past me toward her bedroom. Nothing may come of it. I followed her, watching as she pulled clothes from drawers, her movements efficient, practiced. But you want it to, I said. It wasn't a question. She paused, her back to me. Of course I do. It's what I've worked for my entire career. Then, I hope you get it. The words felt like broken glass in my throat. She turned, studying my face. Do you? Really? Yes, I said, meaning it despite the pain. But I also hope. God, this is selfish. What? I hope you come back, I whispered. When it's over, when you've conquered Los Angeles, I hope you remember that someone in Richmond is waiting for you. The admission hung between us, rain hammering against the windows as if demanding entry. For a heartbeat, I thought she might not respond, might simply gather her things and leave. Instead, she crossed the room in 3 quick steps and kissed me with a ferocity that matched the storm outside. The suitcase fell forgotten as I pressed her against the wall, months of suppressed longing breaking through every carefully constructed barrier. I'm not leaving yet, she whispered against my mouth. And even if I go, this isn't ending. We're just beginning. That night, as Richmond flooded around us, we reclaimed our shared space, making promises neither of us knew if we could keep as the rain washed everything else away. The premiere of Unspoken took place on a crisp autumn evening at Richmond's historic Bird Theater. Press lined the red carpet, local celebrities mingled with industry executives, and nervous energy pulsed through the entire production team. I stood near the entrance in a black designer dress that had cost more than my first camera, watching Alana arrive in a silver gown that made her look like she'd stepped directly from the screen. We hadn't seen each other for 3 weeks. After her successful Warner Brothers audition, she'd been pulled into meetings, wardrobe fittings, and preliminary rehearsals in Los Angeles. Our communication had been reduced to late-night phone calls and text messages that couldn't possibly bridge the growing distance between us. When our eyes met across the crowded lobby, everything else faded momentarily. Then reality reasserted itself as reporters called her name, pulling her attention away for photos and soundbites. "She looks incredible," David said, appearing beside me with 2 champagne flutes. "She does," I agreed, accepting the drink. "How's the Los Angeles contingent treating her?" "Like the rising star she is." He studied me carefully. "This is just the beginning for her, you know. After tonight, everyone will want her." I nodded, swallowing hard. "That's what she deserves." Inside the theater, we were seated strategically apart. Me with producers and executives, Alana with other cast members. Throughout the screening, I found myself watching her reactions more often than the screen, memorizing how she bit her lip during her big scenes, how she discreetly wiped away tears during the film's emotional climax. When the credits rolled and the lights came up, the applause was thunderous. David grabbed the microphone for introductions, calling the cast forward one by one. When Alana took her bow, the audience rose to their feet, their ovation lasting so long it brought fresh tears to her eyes. At the after-party in a downtown Richmond hotel ballroom, we circled each other like cautious satellites, professional obligations keeping us in separate orbits. I chatted with investors while she charmed critics and industry insiders. Photographers captured us in the same frame only once, a carefully composed group shot with the entire principal cast and crew. "Your film is extraordinary," a studio executive told me, clinking glasses. "And that new actress, Washington, she's magnetic. We'd love to set up a meeting when you're next in LA." I smiled automatically, giving my rehearsed response about scheduling and upcoming projects. But my eyes kept finding Alana across the room, watching as she navigated her new reality with the same grace she'd brought to Claire's character. Hours later, as the party thinned, Alana disappeared onto a terrace overlooking the city. I followed, professional caution abandoned in favor of the conversation we'd been avoiding all evening. "Congratulations, director," she said softly as I joined her in the cool night air. "They're calling it your best work yet." "Because of you," I replied. "You elevated every scene you touched." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "My flight to LA leaves tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. The words hit like a physical blow, despite their inevitability. "That soon?" "Pre-production meetings start Monday." She turned to face me fully. "Come with me." "What?" "To Los Angeles, just for a week or 2. Her words came faster now. "You're between projects. David said the studio's interested in your next film. We could take meetings together." The invitation was tempting, a temporary solution, a way to delay the inevitable choice between her career momentum and whatever we were building together. "Alana," I began. "You're going to say it's complicated," she interrupted. "That we need to be practical. That my career needs to come first right now." Her accuracy stung. "Isn't that what you want?" "What I want," she said fiercely, "is not to choose between the career I've fought for and the woman I've fallen in love with." The declaration hung between us, the first time either had named the feeling so explicitly. "I've fallen in love with you too," I admitted quietly. "Which is why I can't ask you to compromise. Not now, when everything you've worked for is finally happening." We stood in silence, Richmond's lights reflecting in the unshed tears in her eyes. Finally, she reached for my hand. "Then we don't compromise," she said. "We adapt. I take the LA project. You finish post-production here. We find a way to make it work, weekends, holidays, whatever it takes, until we figure out the next step." "Long distance rarely works," I cautioned, even as hope flickered. "Neither does giving up before we've tried," she countered. "I refuse to believe this is an either-or situation, Genevieve. We're both too stubborn for that." She was right. If there was anything our time together had proven, it was our mutual stubbornness, our refusal to accept conventional limitations. As we left the party together, returning to the apartment that had witnessed both our convergence and separation, the choice crystallized. The coming months would be difficult, filled with separations, reunions, and the constant negotiation of dual-coast careers. But as we entered our home, the space that had once felt half-empty now held the promise of something sustainable. "So," Alana said, her blue eyes steady on mine as she closed the door behind us. "Partners?" I reached for her, sealing our agreement with a kiss that felt like both an ending and a beginning. Partners,